Hi, everyone. Carter Krishnaiyer here for the Florida Squeeze. And I think the most basic question people are asking right now who are opposed to uh, Donald Trump, whether it's because of what he's doing to Ukraine actively, which is not only tilting towards Russia, but actively now sabotaging Ukraine's war effort by cutting off intelligence and cutting off all aid immediately. Whether it's the tariffs on Canada, and we're going to get more into how that affects Florida next week on the Florida Squeeze, or his general illiberalism and Doge and all of these things. One thing that is very, very clear is beyond performative behavior, the Democrats are not a proper opposition party now. And one of the things that has been stressed in the last 2 weeks or 10 to 14 days since I put out a video about the Democrats really being kind of in the face that the Republicans were in the 1930s in this country is that people have said to me, well, you don't understand. If you start obstructing, if you start challenging things, if you start, if you weaken legislation so that it's less potent, if you start raising objections and force Trump to back off, then we won't win the next election. So I understand this, right? And James Carville is talking about like Democrats should just let everything fail. The House burned down, which it's burning down, right? The United States is a hot mess, just in so many different ways, so many different metrics. It didn't start with Trump. It's not going to end with Trump. But he is indicative of what has happened to this country. So the House is burning down anyway. The House being burnt down is being accelerated by Trump, or the country sinking into the sea, whatever analogy you want to use. So the question is, what is the responsibility of an opposition party in a democratic system? Because to me, based on what I've observed and admittedly, these are all parliamentary systems of some sort, whether it's the UK and Canadian politics, I follow very closely. I don't follow the politics of France, Germany, Japan. What are some other democracies? South Korea, although they have, pressures on their democracy. India is another Westminster system, right? Australia. I don't follow those countries as closely, but I do know there is a responsibility when you're in opposition, which is to offer, to kind of be more than performative, be an actual opposition party, give alternative policy ideas, alternative realities about what the policies the Republicans are doing or the majority party are doing, how it's going to hurt the country, how it's going to hurt common people, how it's going to hurt the economy. The Democrats are not doing that effectively. Okay, when I look for effective commentary about Trump and his behavior, I'm often turning to former neoconservatives, the likes of Bill Kristol or David Frum or Charlie Sykes, right? Those are the people, Adam Kinzinger, who was a Republican member of Congress for 12 years, right? We're turning to people, Joe Walsh, Denver Riggleman, another former Republican member of Congress. They're the ones making the most potent critiques about the damage Trump is doing to this country. And then you have intellectuals and talking heads who are doing the same. But you don't hear it from the Democratic Party. Now, I kind of see this both ways. My personal preference would be that they speak out, that they punch back, that they act out. Not act out performatively like we saw during I'm going to call it the State of the Union. I know it's technically an address to the joint session of Congress, and that's what happens the first year of any new presidency. But let's just call it the State of the Union for just to be clear about what it was. The performative behavior of the Democrats was pathetic. Pathetic, in my opinion. What would have been better would have been to either not show up for the speech and say, okay, because of the way Trump treated Zelensky, who is, for many of us, a hero, and who is doing this under incredible duress. And people forget about Zelensky. He had the opportunity to take safe passage out of Kyiv when the war started. He decided to stay with his people and be subjected to the horrors of war. this is an exceptional man, whether you agree with him or not. The way he was treated by J.D. Vance and by Donald Trump should have led the Democrats to say, okay, we're not showing up for this joint address. Instead, they all show up in mass and behave kind of like children. So is that the way you act as an opposition party? I don't think so. But the point here is, do you have an obligation as an opposition party in a democracy, as the leading opposition party in a democracy? Some of the parliamentary systems I've talked about, there are two really major parties, and then there are a bunch of other parties that pick up seats. Britain has been this way, right? Every prime minister since the 1920s has either been conservative or Labour, right? Germany, every chancellor has either been Christian Democrats or Social Democrats. Canada, it's either a liberal or a conservative. But there are third parties of importance, right? In all of those countries I mentioned, third, fourth, fifth parties. So what is the obligation? I've always thought it has been to oppose and not worry about the next election. But the United States is in this kind of 24/7, 365-day political mode, which actually has been very damaging in my opinion, because it's also minimized the importance of public policy and the importance of what legislators or people who are elected to Congress actually do in the job that they've been elected to do, not the partisan aspect of the job. So I think that's been bad for democracy. And I think this whole trend is bad for democracy. But I must say, you could make the argument by sitting back and letting it burn down, which Carville has advocated and others are advocating. The Democrats are poised to pick up the pieces in 2026. If we have a free and fair election, we don't know if we're going to have a completely free and fair election. There will be an election. Not denying there won't be an election, but you see, we know this from Florida, that DeSantis has put his finger on the scale, and there are ways to manipulate voter turnout and participation in a participatory democracy, and one which does not have mandatory voting, that affect this stuff. So, but assuming we have a free and fair election in 2026, the Democrats at this rate will pick up at least the U.S. House, and probably win a few governorships that they don't have now, just based on how midterms go and how poorly this administration is doing. And that they're already losing some of the support they had from the small swing. There isn't a huge swing vote anymore in the United States. So you could argue that's the right strategy. And I'm going to end talking about the British Conservative Party, which is the oldest political party in the world. They got wiped out by Keir Starmer and Labour in July. July 4th was their election. And here's something to really note about what's happened since. Labour is very unpopular. In fact, Labour is basically neck and neck with Nigel Farage's Reform Party in the polling now. Starmer's ratings are very low. Rachel Reeves, the chancellor, who I'm a big fan of, and I think she's brilliant, but she's even more unpopular than the PM, than Starmer. The Tories are in third place, but they're not far behind. They are doing the same thing the Democrats are doing, which we've never seen in British politics before. Kemi Badenoch, their leader, their new leader, is inept. I think she's just a culture warrior. She doesn't have any broader policy sense, and they're just sitting back and waiting for the government to fail or fall or whatever, which can happen in parliamentary democracies, but also at the same time, with such a large majority, Labour does not need to call another election until 2029. So now the talk that I've heard is that Tories aren't even going to offer a manifesto or any sort of alternative policy ideas until next year, if not maybe 2027. So that seems to be the same way the Democrats are behaving in this country, and it's not doing them any good, in the sense that it's not pushing back on the very dangerous policies coming from this administration. Although you could argue it's putting the Democrats in better shape to win in 2026. So that's the dilemma in a democracy, to say the least.